Now we'll move on to a different style of loop, but one that has similar functionality. It's called the for loop. It's a different way of producing nearly the same looping behavior. Here you can see the basic outline of a for loop. It starts with the for keyword and then has a relatively long set of parentheses. Inside that parentheses, you can see two semicolons that break up three separate statements that will go in the for loop's parameters. In the first expression, we typically initialize our variable counter there. The second expression is typically the condition we check to see if the loop will continue. And the final statement inside the for loop's parameters is the thing that we want to do code-wise after each loop. Usually this is an increment or decrement statement to control the loop. Of course, inside the loop is the code that we want to be repeated over and over. So now if we think back to our train while loop, we can demonstrate the same exact functionality with a for loop. Let's see how we do that. In our starting expression, we would have the variable train number assigned to the value 1. Remember, that was the statement that we executed on the outside of our while loop. Again, the second statement is just going to be that same condition that we checked for the while loop to see if the train number is actually less than or equal to the train's operational variable. And the third statement will increment our train number every time our loop executes. Now let's take a look at how this for loop actually proceeds through the code to sort of get a visualization for the flow of the for loop. In the first statement, the train number variable will be initialized to 1. After that happens, that particular code will never be run again. Once that first statement is executed, it is finished and over. It will move on to check the condition in the second statement. We will see if the train number is actually less than or equal to train's operational. If it is, we will go ahead and execute the loop's code. All of the code contained within the loop will be executed. Once that code is finished, we will come back to the third statement in the parameters, and here we would increment the train number variable so we can move on to the next train and also get ready to stop our loop eventually. From there, we go back to the second statement and see if the train number variable is still less than or equal to train's operational. If it is, we continue the loop again, and the cycle continues until when the train number variable is greater than train's operational. We used a while loop to print the numbers from 1 to 5 in ascending order, so now we're going to use the for loop to print those numbers in descending order. Let's take a look at how we might do that. So the first thing we do in our for loop is we initialize the number variable to 5. That's going to be our counter variable. Then we only want to run the loop as long as that number is greater than 0. And at the end of the loop, we want to decrease that number's value by 1. Inside the loop, we will log the number out to the console. Let's take a look at this code's execution. When the value of number is 5, well, clearly 5 is greater than 0, so that condition would evaluate to true, and then we would get a printout of the number 5 for that particular loop. That cycle would continue until number reached a value of 0, and when number was 0, it would clearly not be bigger than 0, and so the condition would be false, and the loop would stop. Great, so we know while loops and we know for loops. So now let's see if we can identify the non-operational trains. So we've already identified the operational trains, now we're going to identify the ones that are not running for the user, and this time we're going to use a for loop. So let's see which trains are not running. Well, we know we have 8 operational trains today, so probably the very first train will be 9 that's not running. But we have to think about how to put that into the for loop a little bit creatively. So we know we have 8 operational trains and 12 total trains. So let's start our for loop by creating a variable called stopped train. And we don't want to hard code this value. We want to make sure that we use a variable to signal which of the stopped trains it should be. Here we know that the very first stopped train will be the one immediately following the last operational train. So therefore, if we just added 1 to the train's operational variable, we will have the train number for the first stopped train. Then for our condition, we want to make sure that our stopped trains list never goes past the total amount of trains. This is the first time we've used that total trains variable in a loop. And then at the end of the loop, we should of course increase our stopped train number so that we can get all of the right stopped trains printed and then stop the loop. Inside the loop, we'll of course print out a message to the user that this particular train is not running. If we were to execute that code, we would get the following 4 statements today. Woohoo! Stop trains only! Okay, now we have a list of running trains with our while loop. Cool. And we also have a list of our not running trains with our for loop. We're going to add both of those now to our trains.js file. If you take a look here, you can see we've established both the total trains and the trains operational variables in our trains.js file. Then we have our while loop that we built before. This will print all of the running trains. To that, we're going to add at the end our for loop that then prints the stopped trains. What will this look like if we run our current solution? Well, the first thing that will happen is it will execute the while loop, and it will proceed in the exact same fashion that our previous while loop proceeded. It will cycle all the way through train number 8, printing that each one of those trains is running, and then when it arrives at train number equals 9, we will get a false value in the loop's condition, and the loop will stop. Then it will proceed to the for loop. Now we can see our entire solution running with 2 loops where we get all of the running trains printed and then all of the stopped trains printed. Wahoo! Now you are ready to go do your own looping in the challenges. Now you are ready to go do your own looping in the challenges, and we will see you in the next section. Script road trip, and this is level repeatedly without typing it all in forever. Without typing the code in forever. Without typing forever. Which key without typing forever.
That one is having a stroke mid-sentence.
I can't wait to see that.
Wait.